Hey, welcome everybody to Crochet 101. Looks like you're all coming in from the waiting room there. Darren's going to be your teacher. He's the one on screen there. I'm going to be hanging out in the chat, monitoring questions and answering as I can there. I'll also be putting the handout in there in case you need that again. If you have questions, please do use the chat function here on Zoom, and that way I can forward them to Darren and we'll keep class flowing as quickly as possible. And we do have a lot to cover, so I'm going to let him take it away from here.
All right, welcome to class. This is Introduction to Crochet. So if you don't know anything about crochet, then you're in the right place. We're going to start from the very beginning. After you've practiced what we're going to cover in class, you'll have all the skills needed to make hand warmers like these. And I'll explain the pattern after class, at the end of the class. So it might look really intimidating, but after you've practiced a bit, you will be able to make a real project out of the skills, just the skills you're learning today. And then you can build on that and continue to make more complicated things as you go along. So let's change the view to the view of my hands, and we'll go ahead and start. Okay, so today, just for class, just for demonstrating, I'm using this yarn. It's called Hometown Bonus Bundle. It's made by Lion Brand. I'm using Dallas Gray. I'm using this big yarn because it's easy to, for demonstrating, it's easier for the students to see what I'm doing. But the pattern we're going to review at the end of class, we'll be using a different yarn. So, and I'll show that when we get to the end. And I'm going to be using this needle. It's a wooden crochet hook by Lion Brand. It's an N13 or a 9mm. So whenever you buy yarn, you want to check, and it will give you some information. So right here, that's a picture of a crochet hook right there, and it recommends an N13 or a 9mm. So you can, if you don't have that one, you can go up or down one size. It's usually not too big of a crisis, especially for simple projects. But as you accumulate more hooks, you'll end up having all the hooks. So that'll be fine. Okay, so any questions about the yarn or the hooks or anything to do with
I'm
that?
going to interrupt you briefly because I forgot to mention that this class is being recorded. You'll be able to watch it tomorrow at michaels.com/classes or on the Michaels YouTube channel. So you can check there if you miss anything.
Yeah, that'll be nice. You can rewind it and watch and crochet along. So well, let's talk a little bit about the hook. So it's super simple, and it seems like a silly thing to even try to describe it. But it's nice to have the vocabulary. So if you have questions, different hooks are shaped in different ways. This hook has a nice point on the end of it. It's not sharp. Some of them are kind of sharp, but it's a nice point so you can force it through the fabric that you're making. So it's nice for that reason. This is called the head of the crochet hook. This, where it slants in, is called the throat or the neck. I've heard it called both. So that's the throat or the neck. This actual hook, that notch in there, is called the mouth. So you've got the head, the mouth, the throat or the neck, and then this thickest part up here is called the shaft. And that's what kind of shapes your hook. So the shaft, and then the part where you grip is just your finger rest. So sometimes crochet hooks are shaped a little different. Sometimes the neck or the throat or the head will be deeper or more sharp, and you might like one more than the other one. So if you get a crochet hook and you feel like you can't use it, sometimes it's just the way it was made. It's not for you. But they come in metal and plastic and wood, but I like the wooden ones. That's the one I'm using today. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make a slip knot. And there's many, many ways of making a slip knot. And if you already know how to make a slip knot, then, however you're doing it is probably fine. But for crochet, I'm going to demonstrate this way. I call this way short over long. So this is connected to my working yarn. So there's yards and yards of yarn here. So that's the long end. And then this is the short end. So you take the short end and you lay it over the long. So short over long, and you make that kind of that loop. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put your hand in the middle of the loop. You're going to reach under the loop, and you're going to grab hold of your tail. You're going to hold the end of your tail. You don't want to pull the tail through, or it'll just unravel and you'll end up with nothing. So hold the tail and your working yarn together. And then as you pull that through, your slip knot will form. It's almost like magic, right? And then one thing you do want to try for in crochet is you want to make sure that the tail is what's controlling the size of this loop, and that'll come in handy later on. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. You've had worse problems in your life and overcame them, but it'll make things easier in the long run later on. So do that again. This is my working yarn. So this is my long piece and my tail. You do want to leave a tail about 6 to 8 inches so that for finishing later and weaving it of ends, it'll make it easier. So you make the loop like that, putting the short over the long. So short over long. And then you put your hand in the center of the loop. You go under, so you're sneaking under like that. Grab a hold of that yarn, and then you're going to hold the tail of the yarn and your working yarn together. And then all you're doing is just pulling it through, and it cinches up, makes a nice slip knot, and the tail is what controls the size of the loop. And if you already know how to, if you're a knitter, or if you were a Boy Scout or Girl Scout and you already know how to tie knots, however you're doing is probably fine. So any questions about the slip knot? Nope, usually there are questions about the slip knot. So we sure we have it?
Darren, this is Felicia, and they're asking if you can do it one more time.
Okay. So this is my tail. So that's the short end. And this is the long end because it's connected to the working yarn. So you're going to make a loop. It doesn't matter how big that is. And you got your tail, and the short end goes over the long end. So it's short over long. You put your hand in, touch the center of the loop, and then you're going to go under that loop. You're going to grab hold of your tail, the short end, but you're going to make sure you're holding it so it doesn't pull through. And then you're going to pull that back through, and you want to hold on to your working yarn at the same time. And this is how I do it in real life. So it's super easy, but once you get the hang of doing it, it's really easy, but everything looks hard when you don't know how. And then when you practice, it'll be very easy. All right, any questions? Good.
Does it matter how long you leave your tail?
The tail should be about 6 to 8 inches long. You'll need that little bit of length for finishing later. You don't want to leave a great big long tail. Like this might even be too long because it kind of gets in the way, but about that long, about 6 to 8 inches, and it'll make it easier. I'll show you how to weave in the ends later. And if you have a super short tail, it makes it harder. So, all right, so I've got my loop, and my tail is controlling the size of my slip knot of the loop. And then you just take your hook and you just pop it right on there, and you want to cinch it up, not tight. It should move very easily and be quite loose on there. Not super loose, but you can see it's not tight at all. Like you don't want it to be super tight or anything. And the first thing with crochet is you have to learn how to make a chain. Now, when you crochet a chain, that establishes how many stitches you're going to be working with, and it also establishes how wide your piece is going to be. So usually a pattern will tell you how many to chain 20, chain 15. So today I'm going to chain 11. And I'll do this a couple of times. So when you're holding your yarn, you kind of want to hold it under the slip knot right here. And I'll show you how to do that. So you just wrap your yarn around the hook, and it'll kind of rest there in the throat of the hook. And you turn the hook kind of down, and the yarn moves into the mouth of the hook, and then it pulls through. Okay, I'll show you that several more times. You can see I'm not pulling it tight. You don't want to pull it tight. It's a common problem that the chain is made too tight, and that affects the quality of your finished work. So try to make this extra loose. Okay. So you grab your yarn. The yarn rests in the throat of the hook. As you pull it towards the loop, it moves down into the mouth of the hook. You turn it down, and it brings it through. That's kind of what it looks like once you get the hang of it. So scoop it up and then pull it through. If you try to pull it through like this, the mouth of the hook's going to grab the top of the loop. So that's why you have to kind of turn it. Okay, how do we feel about that? And you can see one thing.
Got very quiet. Everyone was mesmerized.
I want to bring this point out. You want to pinch the yarn right under where the yarn comes to the hook and kind of pull it down. And what that does is that opens up a little window right there for you. It makes it a lot easier. So if you pinch your yarn right there with your finger and thumb, and then when I wrap it, pull it. And then I don't change my grip every time, but so now it's getting a little harder, so I'm going to change my grip. So about every 2 or 3, you might want to change your grip, but you want to kind of hold it right there, and that'll make it a little easier for you. All right. You want me to start over at the beginning? Do it again?
I'd say so. And we've got a few questions here. Asked for a tip on keeping the tension loose, which I think is just practice a lot of the time. And then Betsy wanted to know which piece of yarn is each of your hands holding.
All right, let's see if we can answer these questions. So if your tension is very tight and you can't seem to make it loose, what you want to do is use a larger crochet hook. And that's usually the simplest answer is the right answer. You want to make it easy for yourself. So if you're just going to crochet super tight, that's fine. You'll just use a bigger crochet hook. So you'll go up 1 or 2 sizes. And sometimes people will use a larger size for their chain and then go back to the smaller size to make the body of their work. And that's perfectly fine. You need to do what you have to do to keep your chain loose. And the other question, let's get going here. So you can see how I'm pulling it through, and then I'm sliding it up here to the shaft of the hook, and I'm just keeping that window. You want to have a nice window. Pull it through. And then the other question was, which strand of yarn am I holding? I'm not really holding any strand of yarn. At this point, the working yarn is coming over my fingers, but I'm holding the chain. So this is the chain that I'm holding. And then your tail is just down here hanging off the end. I'm not sure if that's what the question was. Does that answer that?
I think so. So you're looping, it's the yarn coming from the ball of yarn that is being wrapped around the hook.
So this is the yarn, this is my working yarn coming from the ball of yarn. And then this is just the end, that's the tail. Okay, how are we feeling about this?
Ooh,
There,
Sharice had a good question. Ooh.
I'm so sorry. I'm about to ask him the same thing you are. We have some left-handers, and if you can have any tips for those that are left-handed.
You know, I kind of do and I kind of don't. I was actually trying to practice left-handed this morning, and I found it, I mean, it's very hard for me because I'm right-handed. I do a lot of stuff with my left hand, but let's see if I can get this going with my left hand. I got to the point where I could actually do it, believe it or not. But what I noticed was I was listening to the directions as I was working with my left hand, and the instructions are the same. So I would suggest just working with your left hand um, and just follow the same instructions that I'm going to give, but it's just going to look backwards because you're doing it with your left hand. So as you can see, I'm struggling here with my left hand. It really made me realize how hard it is to learn something new, like, because I didn't even know how to hold yarn in my left hand, apparently, as I started. So um, there are other videos online with left-handed teachers. If it comes to that, maybe you can look up those. But I think as a left-handed crocheter, it's not any harder for left-handed people. It's just the way you're going to be kind of approaching it. So I hope that helps. And I will practice and try to get better with my left hand. Okay, so I got my slip knot. So I'm going to chain 11.
Erin, we did have a question, and I can't find who asked it now. Does the slip knot count as a chain?
No. 11.
No, it doesn't, because the loop on your hook isn't actually a stitch yet. It's the one below the hook.
Yeah, so yeah, the slip knot doesn't really count. So you do 11, I did 11. So, and this is how you count them. Let's bring it up a little higher. Can you see that? So if you look at your chain, it almost looks like maybe like a braid, but you can kind of see each one of these shapes right here counts as a chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then the loop on your hook never counts. Your active loop never counts as anything. So that's my chain 11. Any questions on how I got here?
I just wanted to pop in and remind everybody, you did get a pattern ahead of class. We're not working through that pattern here. This is just showing you how to do the crochet stitches. And then once you've got a little practice under your belt, you can make those wristers.
Yes, and I will be reviewing the pattern at the end of class. So this is just learning how to do it. And then after you learn how to do it and practice a bit, then you'll be able to make the wristers. So I will review that at the end. So what's going to happen here is I have 11 chains, and now I'm going to work what's called single crochet, and I will be demonstrating that again several times for you. I'm going to be working 10 single crochets. So I have 11 chains, and then this loop, and I'm going to end up with, as we, you always do one extra, I'm sorry, you always do one extra chain because you need that for the height. So what happens is I move across here, and this is my chain. I'm going to go up and then back across. And so what happens is this one chain gets sacrificed, and it doesn't add to the length, but it adds to the height, and it kind of builds up that edge. So we've got my 10 chains here. The 11th one will create that edge, and then I will work back and have 10 single crochets. And that'll make a little more sense as I work it. So, but just so you know why I chained 11, but I will only have 10, okay? So single crochet, you enter the stitch or the chain. So what's gonna happen is I go right through. I look for these V shapes, and I'm just gonna go right through that V shape, right there. And then you pick up your yarn, bring it through, and then you wrap your yarn again, and you bring it through both of these loops. Now I have one loop on my hook. So you go to the next chain, you enter that chain, wrap your yarn, use the hook, pull it through the chain, wrap the yarn around your hook one more time. I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to pull this one through both. And now I have 1 loop. I have my active loop on my hook. So then you want to find your next chain. So right there, you go through the chain, wrap your yarn, and you're going to pull it back through the chain. I have 2 loops. Wrap the yarn again and pull it through both loops. I'm going to stop right here and see what questions you might have.
When you turned to work into the chain, Myra wants to know, did you turn the yarn towards you or away from you?
Okay, so let me take one of these out. So finish my chain. Towards me, I guess. I never really thought about it. Yeah, you just turn it kind of towards you like this. So finish, you're doing your chain, ready to start. So you just kind of turn it like that and start it. I'm not sure how many chains I have now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I do need 1 more. Okay. Any other questions? So I'm going to start my single crochet again. Enter the chain. Bring up a loop. Wrap the yarn. Pull that through both. Enter the chain. Wrap the loop. Enter the chain, wrap the yarn, pull up a loop, wrap the yarn, pull it through both. Enter the chain. All right, so everyone has it? Finish this. It moves quite fast once you get going. But you do have to remember, if this is your first time trying it, it's going to feel really awkward in your hand. And I can attest to that because as I was trying with my left hand, it was very awkward. I didn't know where to put my fingers. I didn't know how to hold the yarn. I didn't know what was happening. I got very frustrated. I put it down and then I came back to it, after a few minutes. So if you're just learning and you're experiencing any of those strong emotions, just put it down and step away from it and then come back later on because it is something new and it can be a bit frustrating. But once you get going, it's quite easy. So let me show you something. I'm going to take out a couple. And
we have a few other questions coming in here. A couple people had questions on how to start working into this first row. How many chains did you skip, or which chain did you go in all the way back to the beginning?
Okay, let me finish this one step and then we'll start clear over at the beginning. So I'm going to, I'm finishing my first row. So I'm finishing my last crochet. This is what it looks like. And now I have to do one chain. It's called chaining up. So just do one chain. And what that creates, as I was talking about before, that creates the height of your stitch. So now I've got this side, it's the height of it. And then I'm going to work across. And so then what happens is you turn your work. So now I'm working back the other direction. And here, you can see this is the first chain right here, or the first stitch. Kind of looks like the chain. You look for this little window, that little hole. You go through, and you're going through both legs of that kind of V shape. You go through both, wrap your yarn, pull it through, wrap your yarn, pull it through both. Find the next one. So you want to look for this that kind of V shape. If you can see that. You can kind of feel for the opening. Enter. You're picking up both strands of this yarn that's on the top. Wrap it, pull it through, wrap it, pull it through both. All right, so I'll go back and address that other question, but any questions about any of these steps right here? You can skip to the end of this row, and then we'll start at the very beginning.
Susie has a question, but I'm not quite sure I understand what she's trying to ask here. So the loop that's anchoring the chain up stitch is not part of the chain?
Well, let's get there. So I'm going to do my last one, my last single crochet. Okay, so now I finished that row. I finished my single crochet. So I'm going to do one chain. So I'm chaining up. And for what I'm doing here, that doesn't count as a stitch. So that's just on the edge, kind of just adding a little bit of height. So with what we're doing today, that doesn't count as a stitch. And I'm going to turn my work. And then you just, does that answer the question?
Yes, she says that's exactly what she was wondering.
So let's start at the very beginning. So were there any? Tie the slip knot. We've got the short over the long. Put your hand inside the loop, reach under, grab the tail, hold the tail and the working yarn together, and cinch up your slip knot. Put your hook in there. Tighten it down, not tight. You want to make sure it can move easy, and you kind of have that little window opening right there. So you can kind of see it's not tight. And I like to pinch under that, hold it with my thumb and my finger. So you wrap the yarn. I'm going to do 11. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you want to make them loose. Let's count these. Let's see what we did. So I'm going to count. You can see right there that kind of V shape right here. That counts as one chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So it looks like I got one too many because I wasn't paying attention. So undo that one. And now we're going to start our first row. The loop on my hook, it doesn't count as a stitch or a chain, so we're not going to worry about that when we're counting. But this one right here, so that's the last chain right there. So we're going to skip that one. We're going to go right in here. So you enter the chain, wrap the yarn, bring up a loop, wrap the yarn, pull it through both. And you move right to the next one. You can kind of feel for the opening. Enter the chain, wrap the yarn, bring up a loop, wrap the yarn, pull it through both. Okay, how do we feel about that? Is that pretty good? It looks super easy, and it actually is pretty easy, but the first couple times you try it, if it's really hard, don't get frustrated. It takes a lot of practice. You can see how kind of my chain's kind of curling, and like that's fine because it'll straighten out at the end. All right, any questions about anything we've covered so far, anything at all?
We've got a couple questions for you to do it a little slower to show where you're entering the chain.
All right, so kind of hold the chain. If you hold the chain on your finger like this, just kind of hold it and support it with your hand and your fingers. And then you can kind of hold it stable with your thumb. And then where I'm going right in there, right, trying to get a good shot of that. Right in here. So you're going to go right in each one of these. So at this point, you're really just picking up one strand of yarn. So you're going right in here, in each one of these little openings. Does that help?
And we've also got a couple questions just to show how you're wrapping the yarn in your left hand, not as if you were left-handed crocheting, but how you tension it.
So there's a lot of different ways of doing this. And this is the way my mother does it. And so I've learned from watching her. I just hold the yarn between my middle finger and my ring finger. And I hold it kind of tight. And as you can see, as I'm pulling it, it doesn't slide super easy, but then I can release it and let it slide. So that's how I'm creating the tension. That way it's super natural in my hand. Some people wrap it around their fingers and kind of do this. There are many ways of doing it. You just kind of want it to slide through your hand nicely. You want to try to find a way that you're not always kind of readjusting your hold. So sometimes people will kind of wrap it around their finger and then maybe around this finger and kind of have it like that. But you can test out different ways. If you have 100 crocheters, I bet you'll come up with 50 different ways that people hold it. I mean, you'd be shocked how many ways people can hold yarn in their hand. But there's no right or wrong way, as long as it's sliding in your hand nicely. See, I do this, I don't ever have to readjust my grip or reposition it in my hand because it just slides through those two fingers. But there are many, many ways of doing it. So I'm just kind of dragging it between those two fingers. And that's how my mother taught me to do it. And that's how she holds her yarn. So that's what we do, right? We do what our mothers tell us. Okay, so I finished my row. Get back to here. Finished my row. I've got my here's my chain down here. My first row of single crochets. Each one of these counts as a stitch. And it kind of looks like the chain, right? So each one of these counts as a stitch. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I did end up with 10. I wasn't sure if I was going to because I was taking it out so many times. But do you see how I'm counting it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then this one at the very end right here. All right, so I'm going to do my chain up. All you do is you just do a chain. And I'm going to lay it down. You wouldn't lay it down. I'm just going to lay it down here like this so you can see what's happening. And then this chain up right here creates the height for the next row. If you didn't do a chain up and you just turned your work and then went right into that chain, what happens is that stitch ends up getting smushed down kind of sideways. See how that stitch, it's not sitting right. It's kind of smushed. So the chain up will give you a much nicer chain up, turn your work. Okay, any questions on how I got here? Doing okay? And then now that we've the hardest part about crochet, in my opinion, is doing the chain and then doing the first row. Once you get past that, then it's pretty easy. You can get a nice rhythm going. So right there is my first stitch. There's my loop that doesn't count. There's my chain up, and there's my first stitch. I'm going through that opening under both strands of the yarn right there. Wrap it, pull it through, wrap it, pull it through both loops. Okay, there's my next one. You can kind of feel for the opening. I'm going to go through there, go through both of those strands of yarn, make sure you're picking up both of them. And I tend to grab it with my hook, but some people might wrap it with their finger. So, I mean, either way is fine, whatever works for you. And then bring it through both. And then just one at a time. Are you able to see? I know it's hard on a video, but are you able to see where I'm going in? Because I'm trying to make sure it's a good view, but it doesn't mean it is. Okay, so find the next opening, go in, wrap your yarn. And that's all there is to it. Once you get, the hardest part is going to be just getting comfortable with holding the yarn in your hand. You've got your hook, you've got your working yarn, you've got your project. So you kind of need three hands to hold everything. But, you know, with practice, you kind of get used to like how your hands are going to figure this out. So that's the hardest part. And once you kind of get used to holding it in your hand and working with the hook, it's not so hard. And it just takes practice. I've been doing this probably for, my mother taught me how to do a chain when I was young. I don't even remember. I was like 2 years old. And she was crocheting and she said, I insisted on learning it. So I've been crocheting for 50 years. It's going to look super easy. But if this is your first day, it's not going to look so easy. And it does take practice, but don't give up. So enter, bring it up, wrap, and then my last one. Okay, I finished my row, and usually a pattern will read, let me go back. Usually a pattern will read, like when you start at the beginning, it'll say, work one single crochet in each single crochet, chain up, turn work. That's kind of how the patterns read. So you chain up, finish my crochet, chain up, turn your work. Now this, people sometimes get hung up on like, how did he turn it? Like what happened? It's so easy that you feel like something's happening, but nothing's happening. All I'm doing is I'm just taking this side, which is in my left hand, and I'm just turning it to my right. And there's no special way. You just, I've heard some people say you're supposed to turn it like you're turning the pages of a book, like that. But I mean, I don't think it matters. It gets there. Like I just turn it, and my projects all have turned out very nice. So any questions? And then you just continue on. Doing one stitch at a time. See, right here, I split my yarn. I didn't pick up all the strands of the yarn. So you do want to watch for that. And at this point right now, I can go back and pick that one up. But had I left that and not fixed that, I would have had to rip out and go back and fix it. Or live with it. Sometimes you live with things, right? All right. Now I'm going to show you how to end your work. All right, so I'm almost to the end of my row. And this is another thing. It's so easy that when you go to do it, you'll feel like, I don't know what to do. I don't remember what he did, but really there's not much to do here. So ending your work, I'm going to just finish all my single crochets. So finished my single crochets. I'm ending my work so I don't chain up because I'm not doing another row. Just cut your yarn. You don't want to cut it right here because it'll unravel. You want to make sure you're leaving a nice long tail. So just cut your work, cut your working yarn. And then all you do is you just pull. You see how I'm just pulling it up, and that tail is going to come through my stitch, and it just pops through just like that. And then that is going to secure everything so it won't come unraveled. And that's how you end your work. Any questions about that or how I got here? We only have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to show you how to work, weave in your ends, and I do want to briefly go over the pattern. So do we have any questions?
I think we had some questions sort of back with the chain and how to start that first row again, but we'll see if we've got time for that. Because remember, this class is being recorded, so you can watch it tomorrow at michaels.com/classes or on the Michaels YouTube channel, whichever is easier to find. We did have, I think there was some confusion between the beginning chain and the turning chain. And the fact that, okay, in this project, say we're making a beginning chain of 11 and skipping one, and then at the end of the row, you chain up one again to get your yarn up to the correct height.
Yes.
And what you chain at the end of the row or the beginning, I don't think it really matters. The height of that chain depends on which stitch you're making, not how wide you want your pageant to be.
Correct. Yes. Were you stating that, or were you asking me something?
I was mostly stating it, but
okay,
yes.
Like everything you said was 100% right. So I don't know. Okay, so weaving in your ends. Crochet is a 3-dimensional stitch, and it's quite thick, so it's easy to hide your ends. There's really no wrong way to do it, as long as it's kind of invisible and it's kind of secure. So like you don't want to go back through there because that's where my yarn came out. So what I'm going to do is I just found just 2 strands of yarn that I can kind of go under to enter it. And now I'm going to go under these 2 as well. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of following the pattern of the way my stitches are. Now I'm kind of going right across there, and you can see, or you can't see, my needle. My needle is buried inside those stitches, and it's poking out the other end. Now what you want to make sure is that it's like that also on the other side. So you cannot see the needle on the other side. So what that means is the needle is going through the center of the stitches. So it's going to pull this. You don't want to pull it tight because you don't want to pull it in and cause it to be smushed. So you can see that doesn't really affect the way my stitches look at all. And you want to double check both sides. You want to go about 2 inches one direction, 2 or 3 inches. And I don't like to always go in a straight line. If I had a bigger piece, I'd probably do a little bit more of a zigzag. And then you go down. So see how I'm just going down to the next kind of area below that? And you can't see my needle on that side. You can kind of see it right there a little bit, but that's not going to, so double check and make sure that doesn't give it a weird texture or something. That looks fine. And then now I'm going to do the same thing, go back the other direction. Now I'm going to do it wrong just to show you what it looks like if you do it wrong. I feel like I'm burying it inside those stitches. So I feel like I'm inside these stitches. I'm going to go across there. Let me check the other side. So you can see here, my needle is showing on that side. So that means when I pull my yarn through there, there's going to be a strand of yarn going that direction, and it's not going to match my stitches. So you just want to go and make sure you're going, and it's not shown. Does that make sense? You're kind of going through the center of the stitches inside of your fabric. And nobody likes this job. It's a bit tedious. And then once you get to the end, you want to pull it tight, snip it off right with your fabric, and then kind of massage it out a little bit. You don't want to tie knots in your work because knots come untied and then it will unravel. You want to, I think we should review the pattern quickly. How do we, you want to review the pattern?
I think we can do that quickly, just so you're familiar with what abbreviations are going to be in there. It's a little bit like learning a new language.
Yeah. So
sorry, Darren. I did want to say, if you have been hanging out in the chat won't be available with the recording. So save it now if you want to reference that later.
We have about 10 minutes, right?
Yep, we got about 10 minutes left.
Okay, so quickly, I'll try to go over this. It's kind of written like a recipe. This one comes from Lion Brand Yarn. It's a free pattern, so you can go to lionbrand.com and there's lots and lots of free patterns that you can choose from. If you want to, print out other copies of this one or whatever, you can just search either that pattern number or the name of it is Crochet Level 1 Wristers. It gives, information about the materials that you need. You just need a ball of yarn, crochet hook, that's appropriate for that yarn, and then large-eyed blunt needles. This is the yarn I made it out of. It's Heartland, and the recommended hook for this one is a J, which is 6 millimeters, but the pattern is asking you to use a size I9, and that's because they want it to be just a little more tightly stitched because it will keep your hands a little bit more warm and add a little structure to them. So sometimes they will actually recommend that you use a different size needle than what the yarn does. So just follow your pattern. And then down here, this is really the only, if you look at this whole page, it's very confusing, but really this is all we're doing right here, just that little tiny bit. Chain 21. And so you might want to practice your chain. You might not want to start, making wristers. You might have to have a couple of tries before you get it going, and that's perfectly normal. So you're going to chain 21, row 1. You make a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across. So you're going to end up with 20 because remember, we're skipping the first chain. You'll end up with 20. And it's a good idea to count, make sure you do have 20. And every row, when you're finished, it's a good idea to count them because it's easy to add or lose a stitch. So row 2, you're going to chain 1, turn your work. You're going to single crochet in each stitch across. So that's pretty easy. Like we after you practice it, you'll have that down. And then all you do is you repeat row 2 until the piece measures about 6.5 inches from the beginning. And then you fasten off. So you end your work like I showed you. But when you end your work this time, because we are going to have to seam to sew these together to make them into the mitt, you want to leave a very long tail, and you can use that tail for your seaming. That's a nice handy little tip. So let me show you how we got there. So actually the pattern is written to make these little cute little mitts. And you can see they're just for your hand and maybe a bit of your wrist. Super cute, but I made mine quite a bit longer. And a little bit, wider because my hand is bigger and I like it to cover my wrist. So make these exactly as written for practice, and then you can try them on and see how you like them. And if you have, if you're making them for a child, instead of back here, keep going until the piece measures 6.5 inches. If you're making them for a child, you might only go 4 inches or 5 inches. And if you have the child with you, what you can do is kind of lay their hand down on it and fold it over and see, how, or just measure their hand. You can kind of test it that way and double check. You can make them longer. If you're making them for somebody that has very big hands, instead of 6.5 inches, you could go 7 or 8. Again, that's one of the best parts about making items like this. You can make them to suit whomever you're going to be giving them to. So that's what they look like when they're done. This is my altered version of them that suit my hand much better. So what you end up with is this. It's kind of pretty much like a square. It's almost a square. It's pretty much a square. And so you're just going to fold it in half. Reposition it. So this is my tail. I left a long tail for seaming. So lay it out like this. I'm going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to use this tail. And quickly, I'm going to show you how to seam it. Let's see if, let's refer back to our pattern. Fold the wrister in half. Bring the first row to meet the last row. Sew the edges together for 1 inch. Leave the next 1.5 inch open for your thumb. Then sew the remainder of the edges together, weave in your ends. Okay, so this is my beginning and my end. So I'm folding them together. I have my large-eyed blunt needle. You want a needle that's has an eye big enough to put yarn through, a nice big eye, but you don't want it to be sharp because we're not piercing the yarn. We're going through the strand. We're going in between the strands of yarn. We're not piercing them. So you want to try to get a nice corner. So you want to, I'm going to go right here. I'm picking up 2 strands of yarn right there on that corner. So right there on that corner. I'm going to pull it all the way through. Okay. And so I like to use these little clips, and you can use like any kind of clips that you have. You can use like a paper clip or anything you might have around the house. It said work for 1 inch and then leave a 1/2 inch opening. You probably want to measure that, but just for the sake of trying to finish quickly for the class. And what this does is this holds everything in place. Because crocheted fabric is soft and stretchy, you might be sewing it and seaming it and everything seems great. And then you get to the end and that happens. And you're like, well, they were the same. Like, how did that happen? They were the same when I started, but it's because it's stretchy. So you want to kind of clip everything in place where it's supposed to be as you're sewing it. And then that way you won't have that problem. So I'm just going to take that out. So what you want to look for across the top are these, that's kind of your chain right there. So you kind of count those the same way you would count the chain. And you want to go right through there and then go on this side and go right through there. You see how I'm picking up 2 strands of yarn? And I like to do this stitch, it's called the running stitch. And then I come back, just pick up 2 strands, pick up 2 strands. So for a nice seam, the trick is you want to always go the same depth, like you wouldn't want to randomly, go down deeper. And you want to keep your stitches spaced apart evenly. And so for following these are our guide. We're following these as a guide that'll keep us doing both. So any questions about where I'm going in for this seam? So pick up that. Pick up that. So 2 strands from each side. Pull it through. And I'm going to enter my mitt the same side that my needle came out of for the running stitch. So this is the top of my mitten. So I worked for 1 inch. I'm going to leave 1.5 inches opening. So let me show you how to do that so you don't have to cut your yarn. I'm just going to kind of weave this up and down. See how I'm just kind of weaving it in and out of my fabric. Does that make sense? Just kind of weave it in and out for 1.5 inches and then pull it through, because you don't really want to have to cut your yarn and weave in extra. That'll give you extra ends you have to weave in, and nobody has time for that, right? And then once you've done that, I'm going to demonstrate a different way. I'm going to show you the whip stitch. There's many, many ways of seaming. They're all pretty easy, and I think you can do it very easily. So for the whip stitch, you want to do the same thing basically. You want to always be going the same distance and the same depth, and you will use these as a guide. This is where you're going to be working. But for the whip stitch, you're always jumping over your work and entering it from the same side. So you're always entering from the same side. You jump over your work and enter it from this side. You want to pull it tight, but not like super tight. Crocheted fabric it'll kind of all scrunch up if you pull it too tight. And then if you're not sure what you're doing, you can kind of go on the other side and like kind of look and see how it is. So there's my opening, and you can see, and it, if it's your first time seaming and you're not very good at it, because you're using the same yarn that you made the project with, even if your stitches aren't super neat, they're not going to show up very much. So don't be intimidated by it. And then each time you do it, it'll get better and easier. So you can kind of see, I'm using my pointer finger in between here to kind of keep them open. I'm using my thumb and my middle finger to keep everything secured. So that makes it easier to sew. So it's not just kind of flopping around. I've got quite a long tail. It kind of gets in the way. And then as
while you're seaming, Darren.
What?
And question while you're seaming. Ellen wants to know, did you flip this inside out so it's right sides together, or are we doing this with wrong sides together?
Well, that's the best part about this project is it's absolutely reversible. Both sides are exactly the same, so you don't really have to worry about right sides or wrong sides. You can look at your work and decide maybe one side looks better than the other one for whatever reason, and then that could be the right side. And in that situation, you would want to put right sides together. But if both sides are equally pleasing, then you can, you don't have to even think about it. So you want to get a nice corner at the end. So I'm going to go right here at this corner and right there at that corner so that they line up nicely. And see, I kind of got a little kind of a flap there. I don't like that. So I'm going to go back again and do another stitch to kind of close up that little flap. And then I'm not going to pull it tight because I'm going to take this out so I have this to seam for another class. But then all you would do is you would weave in your end the way I showed you, about 2 or 3 inches one direction, about 2 or 3 inches back. And then same thing with this end, and then cut it off and then kind of massage it out so that the end is tucked away inside your work. You never want to tie knots because knots leave an unsightly bump. Sometimes you can feel them and they do come untied and they will betray you and your work will unravel. I can attest to that. I've repaired many, many items for people that have tied knots. So if you want your work to look as professional and as nicely made as possible, that's my advice for you. So any questions at all about anything? We really 1 minute over. So what do you think, Claire?
Sorry, I was talking to myself there. We are technically over our time. I know we had a couple questions about going all the way back to the beginning. I don't know if we have time to go back there. While Darren thinks about that, I will pop the handout in the class here one more time. Unfortunately, I don't think participants can download the chat after all. My mistake, that's a Zoom issue. If you do want to keep practicing, and then join us next Monday. We have Crochet 102, where you can learn some more different stitches. That'll be at the same time, and you can sign up at michaels.com/classes. That is January 18th. And then January 25th, we have Crochet 103, the final one in the series. And as a reminder, this class was recorded. You can watch it tomorrow at michaels.com/classes or on the Michaels YouTube channel.
And also, if you have any questions, you can contact me on Instagram or on TikTok. My Instagram and TikTok name are both, it's Mr. M-I-S-T-E-R spelled out, Mr. Woolly Bear. And you can contact me on either platform, and maybe Claire will put that in the chat so you can see how it's written out. Or I think if you search my name, it should come right up too. So what was the question about the beginning? I'll try quickly to go over it if we can.
I think it was how to work in, how to start the first row from where you are. Which chain do you go into?
So there is my last chain. If the loop on my hook does not count, Here is the chain. So depending on which way you're going, that's the first chain from the hook and second one. So first, second, and usually the pattern will read enter, starting with the second chain from the hook is sometimes how you'll hear it. So that's the first chain right there, this kind of V kind of notch there. And then this is the second one. So we're going to skip the first one and we sacrifice that first one and it kind of gets stood up on its edge and becomes our side stitch. So just count the chains from your hook. So the loop doesn't count. And so that's the first chain, second chain. And it's kind of tricky at first, but you'll get the hang of it. You'll get the hang of what you're looking at. So I hope that helps. So you skip the first one, go into the second one, and then do whatever stitch you're instructed to do.
And then a good follow-up question. Why don't you go into the same place on the next row? So why don't you start the next row by skipping that first stitch?
Because when you skip the first chain, what that's doing is building the side edge. It's you're sacrificing that first stitch to create the height of the row, and it creates the side edge. And so when we get to the end of the row to start the next one, we chain up. That's our extra stitch. That's how we kind of continue with that extra stitch and we turn it. If we skipped the first one every time, we would end up with a triangular shaped piece. And maybe that's what you want. So maybe that's how you live your life. But if you want it to be square and have a straight edge, you don't want to lose a stitch each time. So if you chain 11 stitches like we did, skip the first chain, you're working with 10 stitches. At the end of each row, you chain up, and that's kind of like that chain kind of continues with you, that extra chain. That's how it is right there. So just think about that, like you're not leaving that extra chain behind. You're carrying that same extra chain kind of the whole way up. It's not really what it is, but it's kind of how you can look at it. So anything else?
I think that's probably where we're going to have to leave it since we're already 5 minutes over time. But hopefully we see a bunch of you next week and keep practicing.
Yep, don't give up. Keep practicing. All right, have a good week. Thank you. Bye.